Hi guys, Materim here again with another narrative battle report. And this one is Dwarfs versus the Vampire Counts, who will be newly introduced to our story at 2,000 points in a dawn attack scenario. So let's go ahead and get into it and introduce the Vampire Counts. Deep within the gray mountains that separate the lands of Bretonia from those of the Empire lies a ruin of a once great castle. Known as Mounthaven only by sages and those who have long since passed from this world, the ruins remain forgotten and alone within those ancient peaks. So it is strange, then, that a single horse and rider now approach those broken ramparts. This man was beyond ancient, and it was only by dark magic and a sworn oath to serve the master of Mounthaven that his form clung to the slight vestiges of life that remained within it. Maladus was his name, and he served as the last in a long line of dark scribes bound to the house of Mounthaven. As he entered the overgrown courtyard, Maladus dismounted from his skeletal steed. With a silent command, the beast's bones fell to the ground so that he could summon them later. A word of power invoked a ghost light to show him the way. Fearlessly, Maladus entered the keep, where no being had walked in nearly 8 centuries. Deep within the halls of the ruined castle, Maladus passed suits of armor hung on the walls. Such trinkets spoke of the great martial heritage of Mounthaven, a history of blood and glory. Maladus had read that history in the Book of Shadows many times, but to walk through it himself gave him a sense both of power and of insignificance. Finally, Maladus found himself in the innermost chamber of the keep. A simple stone coffin stood upon the floor. Marked only with the symbol of House Mounthaven, the wood was untouched by time, and the layers of dust that covered all the other features of the castle. Maladus opened the Book of Shadows and began to speak the words of power. In his ancient voice echoed in the chamber, the lid of the coffin rose, showing the perfect features of a man lying within. This was Lord Alesandro Mounthaven, the ever-master of the castle, whose eyes would behold the world again for the first time in 800 years. Lord Mounthaven stood and looked down at the scribe who had awoken him. "It has been centuries since I have been disturbed, mortal. Your purpose here had best be important." "Yes, great lord," Maladus replied. "As the Book of Shadows predicted, bloodshed has once again come to your ancient holdings." Lord Mounthaven nodded. His feudal oath to princes long dead still bound him as tightly as the dark magic that maintained his form. The lords of Mounthaven would rise to meet this challenge. "And what is more, my lord, the house of Serpine is one who spills blood in your lands." Alessandro's eyes narrowed, and his perfect face twisted in a feral look that gave away his dark nature. "Serpine!" he snarled. 800 years ago, the Serpine of Bretonia drove away my forces at Mounthaven. Long have my dark dreams been disturbed by thoughts of that day. Come, scribe, we shall awaken my household, and may our fortunes bring the cause of duty and that of vengeance to a single point that we may drive into the beating hearts of our foes. Mere days had passed, and Lord Alessandro Mounthaven was well pleased. His retainers had been summoned, and the forces of his army were growing. He now hungered for a challenge to test his servants, and fate, his dark mistress, answered his desires with a knock on his chamber door. "Enter." The dread scribe Maladus entered. "My lord, our spies have sent word that a mighty dwarvish force is on the march across the empire of Sigmar, headed in this direction." "Really?" Lord Mounthaven smiled. "Yes, my lord. They have routed a small force from Aberheim and continued undaunted towards your domain." "No doubt the Emperor's forces will seek to stop such a brazen trespass into their territory." "Perhaps we should assist them." "My lord?" the scribe asked, confused. "My army hungers for conflict and blood, Maladus, and at full strength this dwarf force could add complications to my plans. I want you to go with Lady Chiara to where the dwarves march. Raise a force in my name and strike at them under the cover of the night." They will no doubt assume that it is another attack by the Empire, and then, like a wounded bear, they will strike out at our enemies in return. The dark scribe writhed his hands in pleasure. Most cunning plan, my lord. We shall leave immediately. As his servant left, Alesandro found himself smiling. He would fulfill his feudal oath and defend the boundaries of Mounthaven, even if he had to drown the world in blood to do so. And so here we see the battlefield where the forces of Lord Mounthaven have come upon the edge of the dwarven encampment of Clan Odhine. We did this as a dawn attack scenario, and kind of fittingly, the dwarves actually got pretty much perfect placement for their random deployment. My vampires didn't do nearly as well, so we're definitely spread out. Hill in the middle there is a scree slope with a Acropolis of Heroes on top of it. The building there is a Grail Chapel with a ghost fence, or a Blessed Bulwark, I'm sorry. There's a mysterious water as the lake there, and mysterious forests on the corners. So definitely a lot more terrain than last time, and my whole army is kind of screwed up with how I rolled, so let's go ahead and get into deployment. So we'll start here on the left with the dwarves, and what is probably the only real bad roll they got for deployment. But it ended up putting their Iron Drakes all the way on what would be my left side of the table, and they're the only things over there for the dwarves. So he's going to have, just like kind of last time we played the dwarves, he's going to have trouble getting them with their only 18-inch range into things. Then here, bricked up, he's got a unit of 16 Thunderers. Next to that is a unit of 20 Longbeards with shields. In the middle is a unit of 20 Hammerers with the Master Rune of Groth One Eye. He also has the Highsmith Graz Anvil Hand and his Thane Goran Odhine in that unit. Next to that is another unit of Thunderers, and he has, I think that's where his other smith is, the Smith Doric Grozson. It's in one of the two Thunderer units. It could be this one or it could be the first one. I don't quite recall. And then right behind that, he has his cannon with a Rune of Forging on top of it. For the vampires, I have starting here a unit of 17 skeletal warriors. And with the skeletal warriors, I have Lady Chiara Orsini, who is a vampire level 2 with the Forbidden Lore of Metal. She also has the Dragon Helm, Iron Curse Icon, and the Aura of Dark Majesty. She's got a 3-up armor save and some ward saves. I've then got my bunker with the 20 zombies and Maladus the Dark Scribe, who's my level 4 necromancer with the Lore of the Vampires. He has the Black Periapt and the Talisman of Preservation. And in front of that, I have a unit of a unit of 3 Crypt Horrors with a Crypt Haunter. Continuing on, I have a Vargulf in the center and a single base of Spirit Hosts next to that. Behind that is a Corpse Cart, and then a unit of 30 Crypt Ghouls. Then I have a unit of 5 Direwolves, and behind that is my Black Coach. And then you can see way on the other side there's another 5-man unit of Direwolves. One thing I just noticed I forgot to tell you, everyone, is in the Skeletal Warriors unit with Lady Chiara Orsini are her 3 Handmaidens, which are 3 Tomb Banshees. So they're forming pretty much the whole front rank of that unit. So I managed to get first turn, and I definitely needed to get some time to move some stuff around. I wanted to get up to him as fast as I could so he didn't have the opportunity to just shoot me to death, because he's got a lot of shooting in this army. So I move everything up aggressively, and I need to get the unit of the skeletal warriors with Lady Orsini there up front, because they're one of the two real combat blocks I have. But I want to keep everything centralized so that Malladus can keep casting the invocations of Nehek, because he can grow both the skeleton unit and the zombie unit, because he has Master of Death. And I want to have it within the range of the corpse cart to get the always strikes first. So I basically am running for that gap between the scree slope and the wall, hoping that my spirit host can keep one of the units tied up and that the Vargulf can do some damage while everything else is headed there. And I only moved up the crypt horrors to where you see them because I didn't want to run any risk of them taking dangerous terrain tests on that scree slope unless it was absolutely necessary. And over here you see the crypt ghouls are following up the spirit host, and the one unit of dogs is basically just moved up to the fence. I want to keep them under cover and stop the thunderers from shooting them until I kind of decide where I need them, because they're fast enough to get into any of those dwarf units there if something needs support. And then this other unit of dogs, I just ran them at a full march. I need to get behind that line and destroy that cannon, because between the two chariots, the Vargulf, and the crypt horrors, I've got a lot of really good targets for that cannon, so I definitely don't want it to be able to pick and choose. Speaking of which, before it gets powered up, I definitely wanted to take some time with the black coach, so I moved it over to hide it behind this building, so now the cannon can't see it. So dwarves stopped my magic cold, and I had no shooting, so we go straight into dwarf turn 2, or dwarf turn 1, I'm sorry. He moves up his iron drakes just barely, because it brings him just in range to shoot at my crypt horrors with that, and he's hoping that those flaming shots are going to be able to put some pain on them. And he pretty much failed to do that. He didn't hit anything with the crypt horrors, and his only movement over on this side was he turned the thunderers to face that unit of dogs, but he completely failed in his shooting. He hit the corpse cart with the cannon and failed to wound, and I think he put a single wound on the Vargulf with shooting from the Under Thunderers. So on my turn, I charged the two dogs into the Thunderers on that side. I charged the Vargulf into the Thunderers on this side, and I was close enough to him so that he didn't get a stand and shoot. So that is probably the only thing that saved that Vargulf's life right there. But I'm thinking, yeah, they're within the stubborn bubble, but I can do enough damage that it'll probably take a couple turns, but those Thunderers are probably going to die. And then everything else is starting to file through that area. I did decide to move the Crypt Horrors up to the top of that hill so that they would be blocked by the building from being shot by the Iron Drakes, because he rolled just horrifically bad to not have succeeded shooting them on turn 1. I didn't really want to give him another opportunity on turn 2. And everything else just moved up. And during my magic, I managed, and you can see I changed the facing of the black coach a little in case I need to go somewhere with it. But I managed to empower it only 1 pip. So it's got, we'll do an additional impact hit. But I really want to keep him undercover for a little while until he gets a couple of more upgrades and then throw him into something. Magic-wise, I did end up getting... I ended up getting Van Hale's Dance on, so that's why you see everybody in a different position here. I used the move to basically just advance everything. I really want to get into combat before he has too much shooting. And because my corpse cart's where it is, everything except for the 2 dog units on the side have ASF. And without ASF, and frankly without any good dice luck on my turn, yeah, those Thunderers just butchered the dogs. They did decent damage to both units, and then just had beaten me in combat so hard, the last few that were remaining crumbled to death. So much for my attempt to get over to that cannon and weaken that flank, because that's not happening. Then over here, I did a few wounds. I guess I'm showing this picture. I don't know why I took it from this angle. But did some wounds with the Vargulf, a decent number of them, and ended up breaking the Thunderers. And as you can see here, I ran them down, and ran off the table after them. So that's pretty much that. Okay, I'm guessing it must have taken both my turn and the dwarf's turn to end up dealing with the Thunderers. So I think what happened is I broke them on turn 1, they fled, I didn't catch them. And then because the dwarves didn't actually take any moves, it's hard for me to tell in these pictures when their turns start. So yeah, I guess that first picture that I just showed was the charge where the Volgulf chased them off the board, and he ended up off the board as well. So this is Vampire turn 3. I charged the Crypt Horrors into the flank of the Hammerers. At this point, I'm not really expecting the Crypt Horrors to live, but the Hammerers die pretty easy. So I ideally want them thinned down before I bring in my skeleton unit with my characters in it. And then I toss my ghouls at this Longbeard unit. Mainly, again, just to try and wear them down, but more importantly, so that they have no ability to maneuver around and help out the Hammerers. Because I feel pretty confident that between the Crypt Horrors in the side and eventually getting the skeleton unit here in there, that I'm going to be able to deal with them pretty easily. Provided, of course, that I can prevent the dwarf units from helping each other. The dwarves work best in very tight blocks where they can use their limited movement to assist each other, and if you can kind of engage them each individually, you can really prevent a lot of that from happening and lessen their impact on each other. So, magic, I think I got Van Hels off again, just to give everybody rerolls. But it didn't really matter. These Longbeards just absolutely brutalized my ghouls. I think I lost like 2.5 ranks, it looks like, out of 30 ghouls. So that was pretty terrible. And okay, this is another one where I didn't take any pictures to start off, because this is actually the next dwarf turn. They didn't have anything they could shoot at, and because it took all of my turn plus his turn for him to be able to kill the Crypt Ghouls, and because I know he was kind of frustrated at that. Again, I'm sorry I'm missing these turn changeovers, but this game with no movement is very difficult. So here we are now into Vampire turn 4. And I actually have to charge the corpse cart into the Hammerers to be able to get the skeletons in there. So they go in there. The ghouls are still kind of holding up the Longbeards. And now here comes my Vargulf in the back. He just came back on the board, so I won't be able to mess with him. And I managed to land a charge into the cannon with my ghosts. The spirit hosts are pretty much going to slowly beat that cannon to death, but since there's nothing magical in the cannon crew, only in the cannon itself, they're not going to be able to hurt me. So that's pretty much neutralized that cannon. That cannon. It's not going to be able to shoot at anything the rest of the game. Then up here, by this point, since it's been about 2 turns, I've empowered the corpse cart up to 4, and I figure it's about time to maneuver it so it can get up into something. So, being that it now has Strider, it doesn't really matter about terrain. I've moved it right up behind the fence, and it's fast enough where it's going to get a charge in, ideally on those Thunderers on the right-hand side. So we go into combat. I start with the Spirit Host combat. I managed to kill 1 of the 3 crewmen here, but they're stubborn dwarves on leadership 9 or 10, whatever it is. Needless to say, they don't go anywhere, but frankly, killing them's not all that important to me, just keeping them tied up is. Then over here, the corpse cart only takes a wound, and I do a bunch of damage to the hammers, but they're stubborn, they're not going anywhere. On the plus side, the shooting from the Banshees screaming into the combat is actually being effective. Between the 3 Banshees, I've taken out, I think by this point, 4 or 5 of the hammers just from the screams. And being that the only character in that unit that can even hurt them is his Dwarf Lord, that unit's not going anywhere for a while. Okay, so here's a picture that definitely lets me know what turn it is. Dwarf turn 4, he's finally starting to... I think he's been moving him the last couple of turns, but he's been only moving him 3 inches because he's trying to shoot, and just hasn't been able to get anything. Now that the skeletons are in combat, there's no real need for him to slow down like that, so he's running his full 6 to keep getting over to us. And then with nothing else to shoot, we go straight into combat. I think this is the turn where his lord finally kills Lady Kiara, takes her off the board, and... or that might have been last turn. But his idea is he's using his lord to slowly go through the characters, but the hammers are doing damage, but I'm keeping them alive with invocations. So I think I net take off another 1. And then, because he charged his gunners into the side, the ghouls just get ripped apart. Of course, in my opinion, as long as they're still there, it's still working, because I'm still holding up now 2 units and preventing them from getting into this fight with the hammers. And once I can kill the hammers, that stubborn rune goes away, and I might be able to start breaking these guys instead of butchering them all. And finally, on his turn, my ghosts kill the cannon, so they're free to come and cause trouble with everybody else. So I reform them so that they're facing the back of the Thunderer unit that's flanking my ghouls there. I figure I can throw them in there and probably not get them killed because there would be too much static res, particularly when I, on my turn, as you see, toss both the ghosts and the now upgraded to 5 pips black coach into the side. So looking at some good impact hits. Between impact hits and the flank and the rear, the way I calculated it is he actually isn't going to be able to inflict enough points to overcome my combat static res there, or static combat res there. And then I just move over my unit here to be within range of everything for those 12-inch bubble spells. And you can see, I don't remember if you saw this in the last picture during the last combat, but he finally managed to kill off the corpse cart. And so now no more getting always strike first on everybody, but at this point I don't know that I super need it. So in combat here, he does destroy the remaining 3 ghouls, and between the impact hits and the ghosts, I get his Thunderer unit down to a single rank. So rather than stay in that fight, he decides the Longbeards are going to turn to face the flank of the Vargulf and try and sweep in and save the Hammerers from getting killed. Although, as you can see, not much luck with that. I killed the characters are the only things that are left here. I've killed the rest of the Hammerers. So now there's no more Stubborn. But the Dwarf Lord did turn around and smack the crap out of the Vargulf. So I did kill the Hammerers at the cost of the Vargulf, but I still think that's up on points. So now we're into my turn. I think it's my turn 5 or... Yeah, 5 or 6. But yeah, it must be 5 because we end up doing a little bit more damage because really at this point he's stopping my magic. He finally spell eaters Nehek, so I can't bring anyone back. And with that happening, he manages to do pretty good in just slaughtering more and more of these skeletons without having the Nehek to bring them back. There's not much left there that's worthwhile. There's no vampires. I think there's one banshee left, maybe 2, but they've only got 1 attack, and my screams have just I've started rolling badly, so I'm not getting over their leadership. So during my turn 6, I managed to kill the last of the Thunderers, and figuring that he would still be tied up with the skeletons, I kind of let my smarmy side get a hold of me this time, and I turned around to show the ass of the black coach there, literally just to wag my ass at him that we had killed his dwarves. Totally stupid plan, particularly when he follows up the combat on that same turn with just annihilating everything in that unit. He just rolled amazingly well and crumbled the whole unit. So he took his reform so that going into his turn 6, he's facing the ass of that almost 200 point chariot with both of his characters, his general who has 1 wound left, his BSB, and the whole unit of Longbeards. And as you can see, the charge on turn 6 ends up killing that chariot because I was stupid and showed its ass. However, when he did that, because he charged everything at it, I realized I had one last chance to stop this from being just an absolute terrible idea. His super powered up Dwarf Lord General, or Rune Lord General, had 1 wound left on him. And I still had the reroll to hit on my black coach. So I decided to have the Cairn Wraith on the back of it try the Chill Touch attack. I failed. Then on the reroll, I hit him. He had no ward save. Died. I traded 195 point black coach for basically 360 points of his general, which turned that stupidity and bravado into an actual worthwhile tactic, though it was, I have to admit, mostly by luck and my opponent not realizing that the Cairn Wraiths could do that. The dwarf camp was alive with activity as the sounds of combat were heard. Dwarfs ran back and forth, gathering weapons and armor as they assembled. The ranks were fully formed as King Oghrim and his hammerer guard, the Oath-bearers, marched forth from a nearby tent. The dwarves didn't need orders. They knew to march at their king's sight. Half the camp was now moving towards its outer perimeter. "Graz!" the king called, searching the blood-stained ground. He found the high smith surrounded by the last of the Dawi's longest beards. His wounds were survivable, but he seemed to be stricken with some cold and odd affliction. "King, this was the Empire's doing. They struck under the cover of darkness, the honorless dogs," one of the Longbeards spat, his body coated in dried blood. "And if that wasn't the worst, they used dark magics, forced their own dead to return to the fight." The king motioned for his hammerers to carry the injured smith back to the camp. I withheld from chasing their injured down, and this is how they respond? His words were coated in fury. At daybreak we will march upon their nearest city, and brick by brick we will tear it down. We will see each of our fallen brothers avenged when their streets turn red. So, when we totaled up the points, we found that the vampire counts had won by 150 points. So, literally, it was my ability to kill his general due to the last turn charge against the black coach that ended up winning the game. And I guess without the wisdom of the great highsmith Graw's anvil hand, the dwarves were completely fooled by Lord Mounthaven's ruse, and now move towards the Empire with blood in their eye and a deep desire to satisfy the grudge that has been started here. All in all, it was fun. I had a good time. I know it was very frustrating for my dwarf opponent with all of the ethereal mess I had. There was a lot of stuff he just couldn't hurt. And I can't really apologize for that, because that's really the only trick this particular build has. I don't really have a Blender Lord per se. And with the magic, with the few exceptions, he was shutting me down every turn. Now, I gotta say, he probably was nicer to me than he really should have been. Early on, I got an Invocation of Nehek off that was not Irresistible Force. And he had the opportunity to use the Spellbreaker rune that would make me lose the spell. And since all I had for vampire casters was Malleus, he chose not to use it. And I think ultimately that was a mistake. Now, he did it, and I totally respect the fact that he did it to make the game more fun. But I think that only having that one caster with Invocation was a major weakness in the army, and he, for the sake of sportsmanship, tied his hands against using that. So I definitely appreciate it. I think it led to a much more even game, but it was definitely one of those things that he was regretting about halfway through the game. The other thing that I've come across with this is it's really hard to do battle reports with dwarves in them. Mostly because I use the changed positions in the pictures to indicate when a turn has changed. And I don't know that he moved any of his units the entire game except for that one Thunderer unit on the far right side and his Iron Drakes. And so if I miss a picture of one of those, it's very hard to keep track of the turns. And I'm sure you guys have recognized it. I think we went through like 4 dwarf turns in 3 pictures, it seemed like. So I do apologize for that. I'll have to come up with, maybe I'll have him throw up a number sign in the picture when we're doing it, just so I can help keep an eye on it. But he definitely did not move much. Not that he really needed to. I kind of came to him and threw everything at him. But let's see, as far as other things I've learned, I probably, at least on a level 2, am not going to bother with the Forbidden Lore again. As I did level 2 for Metal, and frankly, didn't get any of the good spells I wanted to have. So, but Lady Orsini did escape the battle, so she is, well, rather, her unconscious form was found and taken from the battle. So she's still there, her and her 3 handmaidens. So I may keep her around, but she is only one of Lord Mounthaven's court, so I don't know how soon we'll be seeing her. But all in all, I was very excited to get the opportunity to introduce the vampire counts. I've had an issue with them. I actually got them as part of a trade, and didn't really have a whole lot of desire to play them. Mainly because I hadn't come up with a good story and a good fit for the army yet. And I think this idea of kind of the dark magic bound with feudal oaths is definitely something interesting. And I'm mainly going to be focusing on setting it up like a feudal army. It's going to have a lot of cavalry in it, a lot of the nobles of Lord Mounthaven's court as the characters, as well as his servants like Maladus. And I'm working on another character for another list that's his Houndsmaster, who's gonna be able to raise and grow the pack of direwolves and stuff like that. So definitely interesting. And the fun part now is that now that the battle went my way and the vampire counts won, the way we had set this up is that if the vampire counts had lost, the dwarves would have seen through the ruse and the story would have gone one way. But since the vampires won, the dwarves believe it was the Empire that attacked them. And so now Lord Mounthaven is definitely going to utilize that to his advantage. And the next few battles are going to be very entertaining, I think, leading towards kind of pushing the dwarves to be his weapon against the Imperials that are intruding into his lands. So I'm looking forward to getting that underway. But I hope you guys enjoyed this. Again, if you like what you saw, please subscribe or like the video below. And if you have any questions, comments, concerns, or complaints, feel free to leave them in the comment section below, and I'll be more than happy to chat with them. So hope you guys enjoyed, and we will catch you next time.